Hi, I'm Kelly Barner, and thank you for joining me for this week's Supplier Diversity Discussions video. So today I actually want to tell you, I guess, an origin story of sorts. Now, supplier diversity gets a lot of discussion right now, especially in procurement and supply chain circles, but it's not new. In fact, the idea actually stretches back to General Motors in the late 1960s. In my own career, I actually have one story very, very early on in my days in procurement when I first tried to convince a supplier to get their diversity certification, and they said no. And that story has stuck with me such that 20 years later, it still means something, and I'm going to tell you that story. So let me take you way, way back. I'm a year into procurement. I was just working my very first sourcing project, which was hiring a bunch of suppliers to wash windows at a large supermarket chain up and down the US East Coast. Now, one of the things about localized services like that is that it's an excellent opportunity to actually bring in woman-owned, minority-owned suppliers because you're working in specific communities. You're not looking for one large supplier to come in and manage the whole East Coast or an entire state. You're kind of going region by region and neighborhood by neighborhood. So it's an excellent opportunity to bring in these suppliers. Now, as I was going through and we were getting down to the final round, we actually had an incumbent supplier who happened to be woman-owned, but she wasn't certified. And so before we made the final contract awards, I called her up and I said to her, listen, I just wanted to let you know, if you decide to pursue your woman-owned business certification, there's probably more locations in it for you. We could actually expand our contract. And I will never forget, I was so caught off guard by her words. She said to me, why on earth would I do that? She said, listen, I'm a small business and there's only so much I can handle because I work by myself. I'm not some kind of distant owner in an office someplace. I go to each location and I wash those windows myself. She said, you know, a few years ago when you guys did this before, I looked into the process. I thought, hey, what the heck, maybe it's no big deal. She said, do you have any idea how much paperwork, how much time, how much effort is required for me to earn this certification? And she said, every minute that I spend on that paperwork and gathering all that material together is a minute that I'm not spending washing windows. And it's a minute that I'm not making money for me and my family and my business. And that really stuck with me. I wish I could remember what I said to her in the time. I'm sure it was empathetic, right? No, I completely understand where you're coming from. But she was so incredibly right. And I think I learned two things in that moment as a professional and as a procurement practitioner. One is, don't always assume that all suppliers want the exact same thing. Now that goes for whether they're diverse owned or not, right? You can't assume that everybody wants to grow. You can't assume that everybody wants to get twice as many locations awarded to them or twice as much volume, depending on what you're buying from them. But the other thing that it taught me is that for every deal, there has to be true ROI in the deal, both for the supplier and for the company that we as procurement represent. Now, here's the ironic twist that comes at the end of this story. Jumping 20 years forward to today, I never would have thought it, but I am now a 100% woman-owned business. Buyer's meeting point is 100% mine. And am I certified? No, I am not. And do you know why I'm not certified? Because do you have any idea the time and the paperwork and the effort required to get that certification? Every minute that I'm spending getting that certification or managing that paperwork is a minute that I'm not spending writing. I'm not spending preparing for my next call. I'm not invoicing. And I don't necessarily see that the ROI is there for me with my current clientele to either be paid more or get more work. And so when I bring those two stories together, me as a young procurement practitioner learning to understand the supplier side of things, and me today as an entrepreneur that owns my own business, I think it's actually proof of just how much work we still have to do. As much as big corporations really are sincere about their desire to diversify the suppliers that they work with, we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of other things that these diverse-owned businesses, many of which, but not all, are also small and probably resource constrained, are trying to achieve. So My advice to you, if you're in procurement, is before you approach a supplier, make sure you do it prepared to help. Know what resources are available to them, and kudos to your company if you have resources you can offer that supplier to help them actually get through the certification process. But at the same time, if you're a supplier, don't be afraid to speak up. You have a tremendous power and an opportunity to not only influence how large corporations work with you, but also to influence the teams like procurement and supply chain, or the programs like supplier diversity that are intended to help you grow and develop, but may not always hit the mark. Make sure we hear your voice. So that's sort of my supplier diversity origin story, bringing things right up to today. I would love to know, if you're a procurement professional watching this, have you had similar conversations? What types of feedback do you hear from suppliers, whether they're enthusiastic? Do they know certification is an option? Do they push back and ask you about the ROI if they go down that road? And if you're a diverse owned business, how do you broach that conversation with procurement teams? How do you leverage your certification, if you have it, in the sales and business development process? Thank you so much for watching. Remember to keep an eye on hashtag supplier diversity discussions, or you can just follow me directly on LinkedIn for a few more weeks of content, really bringing to light all of these opportunities and the realistic challenges that we have to overcome if we want to achieve our vision.